So imagine you're going to pick a fight with, well, the biggest, most powerful military empire on the planet.
Which is pretty much what a handful of American colonies decided to do in the 1770s.
Exactly. If you're going to do that, you need something much, much stronger than an army.
You need an idea.
You need a story, a reason so powerful that the rest of the world just has to stop and listen.
And that need for a justification, for a powerful idea, is what we're talking about today. We're looking at the document that really launched a nation, the Declaration of Independence.
Right, because by the time we get to the mid-1700s, things in the American colonies were already boiling over with anger towards Great Britain.
A lot of anger.
Yeah.
And while there were 1,000 little frustrations, it all really boiled down to one big one.
They felt like they were being ruled from thousands of miles away by a king and a parliament where they had absolutely no say.
Zero representation, they were being taxed, told what to do.
All without having a voice in the room.
Yeah, that famous phrase, taxation without representation, wasn't just a slogan. It was their daily reality, and it felt completely unfair.
I mean, imagine getting new taxes slapped on everyday stuff, but you can't vote for anyone to argue against it for you.
And this wasn't just some abstract political debate. To enforce all these new laws, Britain sent soldiers.
Right. British troops were stationed in their towns, sometimes living in their communities.
It felt like an occupation, not like protection. It just created this, constant tension where a lot of colonists started thinking, we can't live peacefully like this anymore.
But the stakes here were just astronomical.
Oh, absolutely. Deciding to go for independence wasn't like changing a policy. It was high treason.
Treason. If this whole rebellion thing failed, every single leader involved would have been, well, executed.
So before they could even think about winning a war, they had to prove to the world, and honestly to themselves, that they had tried everything else.
Okay, so let's get into how this actually happened. This wasn't a random mob action. It was a very deliberate, organized political move.
Right. Leaders from the colonies gathered in Philadelphia for what was called the Second Continental Congress. It was basically a temporary, unified government for all 13 colonies.
And they were facing this monumental question.
The biggest question. Can we fix our relationship with Britain, or is it broken for good?
And they debated this for months, right? It wasn't an easy decision.
Not at all. It was incredibly divided. You had some delegates who were still holding out hope for reconciliation, but you had others, like John Adams, who were convinced independence was the only way forward.
So what was the final straw? What finally tipped the scales and made them realize, okay, fixing this isn't an option?
It was the king's response. The colonies had sent letters, petitions. They even sent the famous Olive Branch petition, which was a final attempt at a peaceful solution.
And King George III.
He didn't just ignore them. He flat out declared that the colonies were in a state of open rebellion.
Wow. So he slammed the door shut himself.
He did. And that effectively ended any hope for a peaceful political fix.
That's a huge moment. So with communication dead, they put a formal resolution on the table.
A resolution stating that these colonies ought to be free and independent states.
But just passing a vote in a room isn't enough, right? You need to tell the world why. You need that powerful document you mentioned.
Absolutely. They needed something that was part legal argument, part philosophical statement, and part declaration of war.
And to write this incredibly important document, the Congress picked a team, the Committee of Five.
That's right.
So let's talk about who was on this team. You have Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin,
Roger Sherman, and Robert Livingston. It was a really balanced group politically. They were chosen deliberately to represent different regions, New England, the Middle Colonies, the South.
To show this was a unified movement, not just one part of the country being radical.
Exactly. And each one of them brought something unique to the table. Adams was the powerhouse, the passionate voice who'd been pushing for independence for years.
And Franklin was the wise old statesman. He was already a global celebrity, so his name alone gave the whole thing a lot of credibility, especially with countries like France.
For sure. But even with all that brainpower, the committee turned to one person to write the first draft, Thomas Jefferson.
And he was pretty young at the time. Why him? Why not the fiery John Adams or the world-famous Ben Franklin?
Well, Jefferson just had a gift for writing. He could take these really complex political ideas and put them into simple, elegant language. He had what people called a felicitous pen.
So his job wasn't to invent the arguments.
No, Adams was better at arguing. Jefferson's job was to make the document powerful, to make the argument so clear and undeniable that anyone, from a farmer to a philosopher, could understand it.
So Jefferson gets this massive assignment. What does he do?
He basically locks himself away in his rented rooms in Philadelphia. He worked at this little portable desk he had actually designed himself.
Of course he did.
And he spent days just agonizing over every single word because he knew how much this mattered. He later said his goal wasn't to invent new ideas, but to express the shared mind of the American people.
That's a key point. This wasn't supposed to be his personal opinion. It was meant to be the voice of a whole people.
Exactly. And that voice starts with what is still the most radical part of the whole document.
The philosophy at the very beginning.
The part that says all men are created equal and that they have certain rights that can't be taken away, unalienable rights.
This idea of natural rights, that you're born with them, that a government doesn't give them to you, that was revolutionary.
Completely explosive for the 18th century. I mean, you have to remember, most of Europe was ruled by kings and queens who claimed their power came directly from God.
The divine right of kings.
Right. And the Declaration just flips that whole idea on its head. It says the ultimate power comes from the individual person.
And this thinking comes straight from the Enlightenment, from philosophers like John Locke.
Absolutely, especially John Locke. He argued that these basic rights were life, liberty, and property. But Jefferson made a crucial change.
A really important one. He didn't write property.
No, he wrote life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
So why that change? That seems like a really deliberate choice.
It was a profound choice. Locke's focus on property was very tied to land ownership and wealth. By changing it to the pursuit of happiness, Jefferson made the whole idea much broader.
It's not just about protecting your stuff.
It's about your potential, your aspirations. It makes the revolution about human fulfillment and opportunity for everyone, not just wealthy landowners. It's much more an inspiring and inclusive idea.
So if everyone is born with these rights, the Declaration then says what the government's job is.
And its only job, really. It says governments are created specifically to protect these rights.
The government doesn't grant you freedom. It's just there to protect the freedom you already have.
Exactly. And this is the kicker. If a government fails to do that, if it starts to destroy those rights,
then the people have the right to change it or get rid of it completely.
that's the whole ballgame. Popular sovereignty. The people are in charge.
So that's the powerful philosophical argument. But now Jefferson had to prove that the British government had become destructive.
Right. He had to provide the evidence, which is why the biggest chunk of the document is just a long list of complaints against King George III.
Bruh.
This is the proof that he acted like a tyrant.
And we need to look at this list because it wasn't just abstract stuff. They were responding to real, specific problems.
They needed to show the world they weren't just being impulsive. They had suffered, as they put it, a long train of abuses.
So what were some of the worst ones, the ones that really impacted daily life?
Well, a huge one was that the king kept dissolving their local governments. These are the only places where colonists had elected representatives.
So if their local assembly passed a law the king didn't like,
He just shut it down. It meant they couldn't even govern themselves on purely local issues. It was a total shutdown of self-rule.
that's a direct attack on their political freedom. And then there were the military abuses.
Yes. Having a standing army in their towns during peacetime without their permission was a huge grievance. And these soldiers had to be housed and fed by the colonists because of things like the Quartering Act.
So you could be forced to have a British soldier living in your home, eating your food.
At your own expense, it made the threat feel incredibly personal.
And the economic attacks were brutal, too.
Absolutely. The Declaration complains that the king cut off their trade with the rest of the world. The British Navy basically blockaded their ports, strangling their economy to force them to comply.
And finally, you have the big one, the one that started it all.
The flashpoint. Imposing taxes on them without their consent. That brings the whole argument full circle.
So by listing all these facts, political, military, economic, consanguineous, they were building an undeniable case.
An undeniable case that the king had broken the contract between the ruler and the ruled. They had every right, they argued, to declare independence.
So the draft is written. The philosophy is laid out. The evidence is there. Now comes the hard part, getting all 13 colonies to agree on every single word.
And that was an intense, and for Jefferson, a painful process. For several days, Congress went through the document line by line, debating every phrase.
Can you imagine 50-plus politicians with different agendas editing your masterpiece?
Jefferson was apparently pretty miserable. He just sat there silently while they cut entire sections. Most famously, they removed a long passage where he blamed the king for the slave trade.
Why did they take that out?
For unity. To get the southern slaveholding colonies on board, they had to make compromises. Getting all 13 colonies to agree was more important than anything else, even if it meant watering down some of the moral arguments.
A painful but necessary political move, and all this debate leads to the official vote.
Right, and this is where people sometimes get the dates mixed up. On July 2nd, 1776, Congress held the official vote for independence.
John Adams thought that would be the day everyone celebrated.
He did. He wrote a letter home saying July 2nd would be celebrated with parades and fireworks forever.
But he was off by 2 days.
He was. Because it wasn't until July 4th that the final wording of the Declaration of Independence was officially adopted and approved. And that's the date that stuck.
And then came the signing, a moment that was filled with incredible danger.
The war was already happening. Signing your name to that document was like signing your own death warrant if they lost.
The story goes that John Hancock, the president of the Congress, signed his name first, really big and bold.
So King George could read it without his glasses, he supposedly said. It was a total act of defiance.
And every single one of the 56 men who signed it knew what they were risking.
They were risking everything, their lives, their fortunes. It took incredible courage.
So the document is approved, it's signed, now they have to get the word out. How do you do that in 1776?
No internet, no TV. They printed copies immediately. These were large posters called Dunlap broadsides.
Named after the printer, John Dunlap.
Exactly. And they sent them out on horseback with express riders to all the colonies, to the army, to town squares.
And people would gather in public to hear it read aloud.
Yes, and that was a powerful moment. It took a political document and turned it into a public proclamation, a rallying cry.
And for the Continental Army, which was really struggling at that point.
It was a massive morale boost. It gave them a clear purpose. They weren't just fighting about taxes anymore. They were fighting for the birth of a new nation.
And the impact went way beyond America, right?
Oh, huge global impact. This was one of the first times in modern history a people had successfully argued for their right to rule themselves based on these ideas of human rights.
It became a model for other countries.
A blueprint for revolution. It directly inspired thinkers in the French Revolution a few years later. It became a symbol of hope for people fighting for freedom all over the world.
What an incredible legacy. And today, the original document is kept in the National Archives in Washington, D.C.
Under very tight security. It's in a special case with inert gas and thick glass to protect it from decaying.
So while the physical document is fragile, the ideas inside it.
The ideas are powerful. Equality, liberty, and the right of the people to govern themselves. Those ideas are still the foundation for democracies everywhere. It's a constant reminder that freedom isn't just given to you, it has to be protected.
So in the end, the Declaration wasn't just a breakup letter to a king. It was a mission statement for a new kind of country, one where power comes from the people.
Exactly. And that idea that the power ultimately rests with you, the citizen, is something that continues to shape our world today.
Good luck with your studies.